and at least strike out on your own.
Yeah.
And that's what he's doing, and he's trying to self-educate himself. And then, but at the same time, which a lot of people can relate to, is that you get into something where you go from self-righteous to self-destructive.
Yes, and he falls victim to drugs.
To the temptations of the city.
Yeah.
It's interesting, this comparison to Hair, and I'm wondering, Michael, with your great background in the classic musicals, I get a sense, well, American Idiot and Spring Awakening are both shows that are really pushing the musical theater forward in a way it hasn't been pushed forward really since, you know, maybe with Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice when they were writing true rock musicals. And yet still, though, I'm always aware that, you know, a musical can't be totally about alienation and nihilism, that there has to be some lighter quality to it, because that's what people on Broadway respond to. Do you draw on the traditions of the old musicals working in this new framework that you're in?
Absolutely. I was just saying the other day that structurally, even though this is like a punk rock opera, structurally, this is not that different from, say, Fiddler on the Roof. You have tradition, which is you meet the community, right? We have American Idiot. You meet the whole community. It's like a prologue. You're setting up your world.
Yes.
The next thing that happens in Fiddler is Tevye talks to the audience. He says a couple things, and then he has his song, If I Were a Rich Man, which basically describes exactly where he is and what his hopes and dreams are.
The classic I Want song.
Yep, and so then that's what Jesus of Suburbia is. Basically, Johnny looks at us, he says a few things, he and his two friends introduce themselves a little bit, and then all of Jesus of Suburbia is basically them saying, this is who we are, and we want something more. We want to find what you believe, you know? I leave behind this hurricane of lies. I don't know if I'm allowed to say or not, but...
And we'll give you the Elaine Stritch dispensation.
Okay.
Use that term on PBS.
But you know what I mean? So it's actually, there's a classic structure to this,
Were
which
you
is what I
conscious of that
responded
while you did it?
Because you guys are the collaborators on the book.
Yeah.
Right. I became more and more conscious of it as I started delving into it. And once Billy and I talked, and he gave me the go-ahead to start developing my concept for it, and I went further and further into it, I realized how sturdy this gorgeous material was, and how much story it could hold, and how many different stories it could hold as well.
Do you, as the creator of these songs, did you give him free rein to do whatever he wanted to with them? I mean, how much over his shoulder were you looking at him? Were you ever worried that he might be too Broadwayized, your sound?
No, it was all just a learning process for me. So, you know, he took me to see Spring Awakening, and I loved it. And I remember, you know, the first conversation I had, I was like, yeah, let's do this. And I think when someone is that creative and that passionate, and you have to kind of be hands off in a lot of ways, and let him do his thing, you know, and that's what, you know, I put full faith into what, you know, his vision and what he wanted to do. And the first conversation we ever had was really funny, because I go, do you have an idea? And he goes, yes. But I'm not going to tell you.
Did you realize?
That's an old Broadway director's ploy. He's been using that on everybody.
Now, why wouldn't you tell him?
Well, it was, honestly, it was so embryonic, you know, that I didn't want to say something to him that was so unformed that it would sound puerile, you know. When I really think that American Idiot, the album, is a masterpiece, and I was so passionate about it. And what I really wanted was for him to give me the opportunity to go ahead and start fleshing it out and come up with basically a scenario. So I really thought if I told you just a little shred of an idea that I had at the time, that you'd say, that's not so interesting.
And what was that shred of the idea?
The shred of an idea was that it would be 3 friends who all sort of at the same time recognized the pointlessness of their existence at that moment, and recognized that they had a bad faith relationship to their country, and that they wanted to change that, and that they would go into the world, and somehow they would be separated and come back together.
Doesn't sound
what
like
I
a bad
knew.
idea. I would have said yes to that if he told me right off the bat.
Yeah, I didn't really know. It was mostly like emails and phone calls, and it was just sort of slowly coming out, and you know, and I just thought it was all a good representation of a lot of people's experiences, you know, especially within the past, you know, 8 years, you know, post 9/11 era, you know. So I thought it was a great idea.
Now, you have one of the characters join up to the military. And Michael jokingly said to me, well, except for losing a leg, he kind of came out the best.
Yeah, actually, I thought in a way, because a lot of the sentiment of the songs, of course, anti-war, but looking at how the three characters end up, the guy loses a leg, but he's found a woman whom he loves and loves him. The one guy has not left the couch.
Right.
The other guy has gone into the drug hell and come out, but it's ambivalent if he's ever going to make anything of himself.
Right.
And at the end, the one guy you think who actually has gotten his life together is the guy who joined the military.
Yeah, it's ironic.
It's
that way.
ironic.
Is that intentional on your
It
part?
wasn't until I realized that his extraordinary girl would come home with him. And that was well into the process, like about a year ago, when that occurred to me. I actually find the ending kind of hopeful. Honestly, I feel like that all three of them, I think Will actually does get off the couch. You see that he makes this uneasy truce with Heather and her new boyfriend.
Oh,
and
I
he's
love
got
that.
And he's holding his baby. He's owning the fact that he's got this son. And I think that Johnny, even though he has screwed up his life completely, he did, you know, there were two choices he could make. He could have continued down the path of self-destruction, and he actually killed off that bad part of himself.
And he gets off the heroin, which,
Yeah.
as you just said, which is no small
I
matter.
think it's a big deal.
Is that theme, the ultimate optimism of the show, is that inherent in your work, do you think?
I like to try to find like you know, a light at the end of a tunnel with, you know, when I'm making an album, you know, like our last album, 21st Century Breakdown, is a song called "See the Light" at the very end. But I didn't really know. I think like the part of, I think, you know, I think reflection is a really good ritual to go through in order to figure out who you are. You got to think about your past. You can't just abandon it, you know, where a lot of people say, live in the moment, just go forward. Well, you need to have some, you know, you need to take some lumps and bruises along the way, you know. So, you know, I mean, after Homecoming, which is like this sort of, you know, bittersweet, glorious kind of ending to these guys' journey, then all of a sudden there's that reflective part with the song What's Her Name, where he's, you know, Gallagher, he sings the line, I can remember the face, but I can't recall the name, and you're just like, and then that moment right there, like, just kills me every single time, because the way he delivers it, you're just like, you know, he's like you're a fool, but you've also gained something. You're smarter because of the process.
Right. Yeah. No, it's an effective ending there, because it's not just happy ending.
Right.
Not
Not
at all.
At the very, when he does say that, you're still a fool, and that's why I think you don't know if this guy's ever really going to get it together.
But the
Look,
only
if someone can say at the end of it, if they could say, don't want to be an American idiot at the beginning, and at the very end say, she was right, I am an
Yes,
idiot,
yes.
then that is awareness.
Yes.
And I think self-awareness can only lead to something positive.
Right, and then that's the only redemption.
Now, are you getting